Okay.
The broadcast is live.
And then we need to connect, George, we need to connect your Facebook. Yeah.
Andrew, I chose you for a reason. Lead these people. Show me the best numbers this place has ever seen. Last quarter, we saw 4% growth. Double it.
You got it.
Double.
Done.
I'm not kidding.
Neither am I. It's already done. I'm just kidding. It's going to take some time.
Double.
Seems like a basic reward system where you give us points and then we redeem those points for prizes.
You're exactly right, and you get a point.
Oh.
Is that a vibrator?
20 points.
How does one get a point?
I've outlined the exact parameters in an email, so check your spam folders, but basically, you do your job better, you get points. So, collect 15 points and redeem them for this polar bear.
Why is it all kid stuff in a vibrator? It's so gross.
There's lots of stuff. John Irving, collected works, 22 points. Or you can pool your points and redeem 55 for this maternity shirt.
How about you want us to work harder, pay us more?
I can't.
This point system is really insulting.
Ooh, well, I didn't mean to offend you, and I hope you'll forgive me because I am very, very sorry. 16 points.
It's a tablecloth.
What if we went all the way up to 500 points?
That's a crazy amount of points.
But what if?
Well, what do you want?
I don't know. For such a crazy number, I'd like something pretty crazy.
All right, for 500 points, I will wear a dress to work.
That's pretty good. What about for 1,000 points?
I'll run naked through the parking lot with a donut on my ding-dong. Yeah, you like that? All right, for 5,000 points, I will let you tattoo whatever you want on the stern of the old SS Bernard. Here we go.
All right. Really? All right, and you are totally serious.
Swear to God, hope to die. Now let's get to work.
Wait, but you did say we could pool our points, right? In that case, let's get to work, guys.
Yeah!
Sure, guys. I can have a tea by the beginning of next week. All right, thank you very much.
Phyllis, Bracken Auto.
Ask for Donald, Karen's Bananas.
Okay.
I just want you to benefit from our herbal soup.
Teabag bone.
Andrew.
Hold on 1 second. File that.
Have you noticed a little bit of a mood shift around here?
No, I haven't noticed anything.
Really? Because I sat next to Stanley for years, and this is nap time. Open eye nap time. He balances the phone on his shoulder and just powers down. Now look at him.
You got to unleash the power of the pyramid.
I don't know what to tell you, man.
I can send you an email confirmation.
You think it has something to do with that incentive program?
Oh, 100%. We all want to see you tattoo your ass.
I think people thought I was kidding when I said that.
No, you definitely weren't kidding. And that came across loud and clear. Oh, by the way, I want to hand this in.
120 points.
Yeah, it's a big sale. Don't worry about it, though. I don't really care about the points. I would like a point receipt, though. Hey, yes, this is Jim Halper calling for Donald. Can you hold on for 1 second? Thank you very much.
Who talked to Maggie at Kaufman's?
Yes, Mrs. Guthrie.
Took him one day.
I'm not as big as you're drunk I am. Do not resuscitate.
Okay, keep in mind, it's not too late to choose another prize, and there are some great new additions. My car for 1,000 points. Or best offer.
What else you got?
Oh, and then this was Phyllis's idea.
Oh!
So nasty, Phyllis.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, we'll start to see some people jumping in. Nice to see you, Mark, coming from Indiana, and hope everyone as well. Virgil's having a really good and positive day and productive, and so excited to have you all on. We'll be with you for an hour here from 11 to noon for those that are Eastern time. Thank you so much for jumping on. Hopefully you're live, and if you have any of your team members that are jumping on, let them know that we've got a really great session today. These are monthly sessions that we are facilitating workshops to be able to connect with other like-minded leaders that really care about people and culture in a way that understands that as business leaders, as professionals, that we have a unique opportunity to impact people's lives in transformative ways, and how important it is to leverage our leadership and our work to create those positive opportunities, and to really engage people in ways that go beyond normal programming and methodologies that we've used in the past. And speaking of leaders that really care about people and love culture, I've got George and Shannon on with me today. They're definitely not guests. We are really leading this workshop together. George and Shannon are a part of Culture of Good. They're part of our team here. We surround ourselves with people that, like I said, really care about people and culture, but are also skilled in ways that that can really help other organizations to build a culture of good that engages employees, customers, and communities. So George is a strategic partner and implementer for Culture of Good. His courageous, compassionate spirit inspired him to lead in nonprofit organizations, much like myself, local communities for over 20 years. His transition from the for-profit business was met with 200% growth in his company that he launched in under 3 years. And a big part of that was implementing a culture of good, as well as engaging with employees with what he calls a change formation mindset. So early on in his business, it wasn't culture of good, it was a mindset change that he was teaching. And that's something that we're going to talk about today. His passion is helping business leaders cultivate a culture that allows their team to drive positive results in the workplace and world. Shannon Rose is driven to empower our world through love. What's love got to do with it? She has deep experience in global business and sales, her unique perspective of how corporate environments behave, how corporations engage their key stakeholders, and what their key barriers to success are. Through those experiences, she's developed a love-based approach to business coaching and consulting, bringing all levels of emotionally intelligent change leadership and corporate culture impact change to take place. As a result, Shannon Rose comes from a place of compassion, positivity, and service to others. One of her favorite quotes, which I love, is "Be the change you want to see in the world." The thing that I say a lot is "Be the change you want to see in your company." So there you go. Very cool people. She is currently the founder and principal of Shannon Rose Consulting and Empower You Self-Defense and Empowerment Coaching. And she trains mixed martial arts. So if you want to bring in a consultant that can also teach your team mixed martial arts as part of your consulting experience and workshop, we'll do that. We will do that. Shannon will come in and beat everybody up that you need to be beat up in your organization. So welcome, George and Shannon. Yeah, like parents used to do back in the day, right? This is I'm doing this with love. George remembers that. Love and mercy, right? Exactly. Hopefully, we're going to get to a place where we're learning to lead today in ways that are engaging to employees, but it's done so in meaningful and fulfilling ways, and that's something that we're going to really discuss today. So let's look at our workshop discussion flow for today. We're going to talk about employee engagement, really defining what that is, so that we can all get on the same page and know, all right, this is the baseline, this is what we're talking about. Secondly, we're going to outline the steps to effective engagement. Now, through this workshop, we'll have you stop, pause, maybe offer something in the chat. We'll have some Q&A at the end for those that want to stick around, as well as a QR code if you want to bring this workshop into your company. But we're going to outline those steps to effective engagement, highlight the characteristics of authentic engagement, like what qualities and characteristics does authentic engagement have. We worked, George, Shannon, and I have worked with organizations for well over 20 years, companies, nonprofit and for-profit. The reality is engagement is something that is a challenge in every industry, every area of business, and it'll always be a challenge. But we're gonna define what are those characteristics of authentic engagement, and then we're gonna commit to taking action. Right? This is a workshop, so we're gonna put in some work. We're gonna ask you at the end of the workshop to really and throughout to really answer some questions and be challenged in ways as leaders. Some of you are on here. You're head of HR for your company. You're leading people engagement. Potentially, you have a position where you're the liaison between your organization and local nonprofits and charity work and community. So all of you that are on here, if you're leading a team, you are going to get a lot out of this this workshop. If you're in any type of leadership position at all, this is definitely something that you want to be a part of. So 2 slides I want to read really quick as we define employee engagement, and then we'll have George and Shannon interrupt me and get into this conversation. Employee engagement, according to Wikipedia, is a fundamental concept in the effort to understand and describe both quantitatively or qualitatively and quantitatively the nature of the relationship between an organization and its employees. So this is a lot of what we think about is engagement from organization to a whole group of employees. We're actually going to get deeper than that today, but an engaged employee is defined as one who is fully absorbed by and enthusiastic about their work, and so takes positive action to further the organization's reputation and interests. An engaged employee has a positive attitude toward the organization and its values. In contrast, a disengaged employee may range from someone doing the bare minimum at work, aka coasting, up to an employee who is actively damaging the company's work output and reputation. That's definitely not what we want to see. Over the last 15 years, employee engagement has hovered around 30% in terms of very engaged employees, right around that 30% range, 70% making up either unengaged or disengaged. Unengaged are those that are coasting, disengaged are those that are looking actively for other work or ruining your reputation. You definitely don't want that. So that's Wikipedia. A funny one is off of Urban Dictionary. I really like this. I looked up employee engagement on Urban Dictionary. It says corporate. Here's a definition: where despairing and dejected workplace drones are forced to pretend that they are happy at work, usually by useless a-holes in HR trying to justify their existence. I was like, oh God, that's great. Head of HR, see how well our employee engagement is working. Since we reinforced the glass, none of them have been able to throw themselves out the window. So I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is definitely satire, but it does ring true that what we're doing is not trying to retain people by forcing them to stay. We want people to want to stay. Engagement's not about how many people we can keep there. Engagement's about whether people actually want to be there by choice. They desire to be connected. They're committed to the organization, to its values, its purpose, its driving mission. They feel connected to the leadership, the people around them. We're going to talk about how not just to build a sense of engagement, to build a culture of engagement. I do want to set a kind of an idea here that there's really no such thing as an engaged employee in terms of an employee reaching a state of they're just engaged. Engagement's fluid. It's evolving. It's always going to look different. That's why we can't just gauge it upon a satisfaction survey, because whether we send that out on a Monday or a Friday, the results are going to be different because people feel different. So because feelings change, we have to understand that engagement's going to change as well. And over the course of several decades, engagement has looked different. So 50 years ago, employees wanted to be married to the company, receive the gold watch at the end of 50 years, retire, whatever, 40 years, and go on their merry way. But it looked more like being married to the workplace. In the last 20, we've been able to kind of transition from that idea to talking about more of an engagement, right? So they don't want to be married to us. They want to be engaged to us. I think what we found through the pandemic, and we've known this for some time, but it became more evident, that employees don't even really want to be married or engaged. They want to date us. It's an everyday, we're constantly re-engaging employees that are working for us. When I say employees, I'm talking about team members, I'm talking about contributors to your organization. They're dating. So how do we date those that are working for us? How do we continue to build relationship and connection with those? So when we talk about the qualities of good employee engagement within a culture, we're looking at it in three ways: compassionate leadership, culture of empowerment, and community fulfillment. Yeah. So when we think about compassionate leadership, George, I'll just go ahead and let you kind of take over from the idea of compassionate leadership and talk a little bit about the power of that in terms of building a culture of engagement.
Yeah, I think, for me, Ryan, when we talk about compassionate leadership, I also think about my place as an employee, or even being a part of a team, and really starting from the ground. Ryan McShane said it best, and I love what he said. He said, address the whole person, not just the role, but really address the whole person in a sense. And I remember at times, even like this, when it comes to engaging and really finding myself connected, I found myself under a person who I felt was very compassionate. He wasn't about the title. He cared about the person. And because there are certain areas in my life, believe it or not, where I would go shutdown mode, introvert, right? So there's areas where I'm out, I'm talkative, I want to get around, and then there's certain areas where I just shell, I listen, I observe, and he really empowered me through compassion. And I think the start of that was that he understood who I was. He knew George. He knew how George would react with his surroundings. And I think it's important as leaders that we have that compassion. And that compassion really starts with knowing who you are, knowing who your teammates are. You talk about dating and it not being long term. A lot of that is because we are not connected to our people as much as we used to be. We're not human anymore. We're more business, right? We're business driven versus people driven. And so having a people driven mindset to where you know who your teammates are, you know how they react, and that you can then allow that trust factor to really blend in and connect with them. I think it's so vital that we understand those behaviors of our teammates and our employees enough to understand what they need and when they need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I agree. I think when I first came into TCC, which by the way, through the pandemic, their engagement scores went up. They went up from low 90s through the pandemic. They're at 95.8 engagement, and I can send out what that looks like in terms of how they measure that. Because it's not just satisfaction. There's specific areas of the business that they ask around. And if anybody's interested in having those questions, I can send that out in a follow-up email if you'll send me that. But yeah, that's, I think, really important to understand regarding knowing your people. George, you said that leader really you felt was compassionate. How did they? Let's talk about how, because I want to go beyond like what engagement is to how to engage in those ways. Like, how did you see that in a practical way in your life with that leader?
I think it all starts with us as leaders with titles, removing that title, right? And just simply being who you are and not what you do. That was a huge change. The title didn't mean much to me as much as it meant them really caring, them really being where I was, meeting me at my place. And really, it's a sense of humility, right? To lower yourself and really be involved with George. And so, having a leader that I had, he was able to sit with me, walk with me in my environment, in my struggle. And that took a lot of trust because, before I can open up and be vulnerable, there had to be a sense of vulnerability on his end as a leader. And I
Yeah.
think we have to get to that place as leaders where we're able to be as vulnerable as we're expecting our people to be in all aspects. If we're wanting them to lead, how are you leading? And don't just show them the victories, but show them the scars that we have, the war rooms. Tell the story that really gets there. I think that compassionate leadership is met with the struggle of, hey, I was there. I felt like you felt. I was in those shoes before. And although our circumstances may be different and our environment that we come from may be different, I think it's just that flesh to flesh humility talk of really putting down the title and getting to know who they are. You know, what moves them, what makes them cry, what are they passionate about? Because once they're bought into that, I think the expectation of the employee is that I want to run through a wall with you. I want to do whatever it takes, but it takes that relationship, right, to really build before action can be taking place from a business standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Shannon, don't hesitate. Let's make this a convo. I don't want it to be a Q&A for me and George. So let's talk about this.
I think the big thing, Ryan, is that for me, and I'll be transparent as possible. For me, I had a trust issue all my life, especially with men. If you rewind this 15 years ago, and it's me, you, and Shannon sitting here, I would spill my life to Shannon before I even told you my name as a man, because I had issues. And so as a leader, we have to know and discover and be able to discern the pain points of our employees to be able to really get down to why do they shut down when I ask them a simple question, or what is it about George that makes him so comfortable with a Shannon versus a Ryan? Well, I grew up with no men around me that were trustworthy, and my aunts and my mom that really loved on me. So I experienced love from a mother's nature. I struggle with it from a man's nature in my life. So it was just natural for me to be able to trust and cling on to that voice. And so him understanding my struggle and my story of where I come from was allowed to open up the door that turned my fear into faith. And when I talk about faith, I'm saying I had faith enough in him that I can tell him one thing and it stayed between us. And so start with before we try to break a big rock, start with a small pebble that can be held onto. And I think that fear and faith was so huge that was able to transition, my life, Shannon.
Yeah, well, as you know, love is what my whole goal is. But, it took me a long, long, long time to say love in the workplace. And it took me a long time because that was shut down and seen as a weak word. And when I came into executive leadership and I started driving companies and large organizations and clients, I repressed that. However, when I started to eventually come into my own and use the word love and say, I love you as a client, and because I love you as a client, I'm going to give you unconditional love, meaning I'm going to support you. I'm going to show up consistently for you, because those are love-based actions, not fear-based actions. And when I started to act in that way and openly love my environment and be of love and hold environments for love to come in, everything transformed. The clients that needed to leave left. The clients that needed to come in came in. It was like everything just kind of right aligned. Employees that were like, I don't want anything to do with that, left. Employees that wanted to be all about it came. And it was just a scary but incredible transformation when I finally created that and said it. So it's not just about creating it and talking about it, it's about doing it as well. So
that's really cool. Two things come to mind. One is we have to stop looking at employee engagement as like organization to employees and start looking at it as leader to team, like each individual, right? Because when we think about organizations, we've got the enterprise, we've got team, and we have individuals. Engagement happens on all three levels. But what we're talking about right now is this engagement, the engagement of each individual person. I think of Claude Silver, She's the chief heart officer for VaynerMedia, and at the time where they had 800 employees, she was meeting with each one of them every year, right? Even if it was for 10, 20 minutes, just to have time, just to show that this leader within the organization cared that much, right? People have to feel that. The second thing that comes to mind is, there could be some that are on this workshop that are thinking, okay, but what if I'm just like, I just have a department, or what if I'm just a team member, or what? And I think it's like what George said, start with a pebble. You can be a spark of the kind of thing that we're talking about, right? You can spark engagement with people around you and really love people well and show up for them. And what you'll find really is the person within an organization that shows up for people and really cares about them eventually begins to build leadership. I see people within organizations that are now the CEO of the company that started off working in the warehouse. And what you'll find is that when the reason that they got to be CEO is not because they started off the most skilled. It was because the more people believed in them as a leader. And that was because they showed up for them, that they cared, that they were compassionate. George, what you said about your distrust in men and how that impacted your work and whether you would be engaged, nobody's talking about stuff like that because we don't know our people that well. The thing is, we're just sending out surveys and questions. We don't even know whether George is engaged or not by a survey that he sends back. We only know if George is engaged or not when we sit down and ask him.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
We don't know our people well. It goes to those love languages, right? Everybody speaks a different language. And as we dig into that, we got to be able to know, what is Ryan, what really opens Ryan up? What is it? Is it a gift? Is it time? Not everybody wants time. Like I don't need a lot of time with my CEO, but I want to know that my CEO is connected to me. So how do we connect? He needs to understand what makes me open up, whether it's food or whether it's a gift. It's all these different things. We got to get back into the place where we can say, you know what, I know what moves Ryan. I know his love language. I know what not to do. I know how to approach Shannon and be able to connect with her and engage with her so that I can empower her. I think the root of it is knowing our people. Like you said, you can send out a survey, and some people don't even do the survey, or some people just click, quick click, just get it done. Especially if it's mandatory. But they can care less. And sometimes, I question whether or not the surveys are reality.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and that's the idea, is that we're looking at engagement beyond just satisfaction. We don't want people to be satisfied. That's like the worst thing. We want them fulfilled, and we want them growing and empowered and excited about their place of work and the impact. But we have to see work beyond just the tasks that are getting done, the check the box, because no one engages with that. Really, to be honest, no one engages with a company or an organization. They engage with people because it's a relationship. And although we can have a relationship with the organization, we do so through leaders. And so to be and have compassionate leadership, I think is so powerful. Is there anything else beyond the compassionate leadership, George, that you can think of? Or Shannon? George, what would be a challenge, I would say, that you could send out to those that are on here as part of this workshop that we could maybe answer through the chat, or something that we could write down right now that might spark some ideas around how to show up for people that way?
I think that's a good question. The main challenges that I have, for instance, right now I'm asking myself, even on this live video, how well do I know my team that I have right now? And then the second step is, what do I need to do to get to know them? And I think that challenge is really figuring out. We average 22 to 24 business days a month. What percentage of that can I give to my team in the next 30 days? How much do I need to give to my team? And I challenge people to do that. Whether it's 5% or 10% of your time, to just really lock in. You mentioned Claudia with 800 plus employees. meeting with them, across 365 days of the year. I'm
That's
probably
a
saying
lot.
probably 250 days of work,
Yeah.
and she travels. That's a lot. And so
Yeah.
if you think of that magnitude, some of us are managing, 5, 10, 15 people. We should
Yep.
be able to do,
Yeah.
those. And so I want to challenge people in that area.
Yeah, like kind of like ensuring that we've got time. See, we try to tell people like work-life harmony or balance, but all the meetings we set up as leaders with people is about work, not about life.
Yeah.
And so we need to prioritize that within our leadership at work and say, how much time am I spending, like George said, to I love that. I always think too, like, what did I learn about each one of my team members new? What did I learn about them this week? Like what was one thing that I like didn't know that I know now? Because that not that we have to like ask them, tell me something I don't know about you, like, but to have genuine conversation where you're actually learning about people in that way, I think is a really powerful idea. So yeah, compassionate leadership, leaders really showing up for people and knowing people, such a powerful idea that seems elementary, but all the programming and all of the efforts and events and everything else for engagement is secondary to actually getting to know the person and rehumanizing the business. So yeah, culture of empowerment. So compassionate leadership, another quality of a culture of engagement is empowerment. I want to hear more about that, Shannon.
Sure. Well, one of the biggest pieces of work that I do is empowerment. So one of my earliest recognitions or, memories of when I started to reclaim my life as my own, which is how I define empowerment in the work I do, is, I was alluding to it before, but there was a point in my career where I wanted to have like a higher paycheck. I wanted to lead more people. I wanted to be in executive leadership and grow in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do so, I felt like I needed to shut a lot of the qualities that made me and unique off. Things like being intuitive, right? Picking up on feelings, being a mother.
Yes.
A lot of times that has worked against me. Loving my employees freely, my clients. And because I thought these things worked against me, I shut them off and I just pretended that it was something I didn't need. I became more stoic and more aggressive, and not in like a bad way, but just more hungry for those things. I started to behave in those ways that I thought, oh, that will get me what I wanted. Well, looking back, I missed out on a lot of I have 2 girls, a 10 and an 8-year-old now, but when they were just born, I was traveling the world for months and, for business, doing these things. And I missed their first steps. I missed some of their first experiences. It kind of makes me tear up now.
Yeah, of course. Right.
And looking back, those were the important things to me that I should have voiced and created room and empowered myself to stand up for, because that is what it's all about when you think of it and when you think about getting to know your employees. And so it has since taken me many years to reclaim my life as my own, even just a portion of it.
Yeah.
And I recognize now that I have the power to change. Right? It isn't outside of me, it is in me. And the change I want to see in the world starts with me. So I always think of mixed martial arts, right?
Yeah.
That white belt mentality that I'm a constant learner, right? I'm a constant learner and I'm willing to put my ego aside and try and fail at self-improvement, right? It's going to be a long process. It's going to be a life process. So learn to love that process. And I think that ties back to what George was saying about compassionate leadership. It's putting that ego aside. And by doing that and saying, wow, I can learn something from my employees. This is a two-way street. This is a win-win. You really are setting it up for this environment and culture of empowerment. So empowerment, by definition, is the process of supporting others to discover and claim personal power. And so it's kind of scary when you have individuals claiming power and reclaiming power and becoming more powerful as individuals. It means that they can do more. It means they can act autonomously. And
Yeah.
as a leader, if you're trying to control every little thing, that is very scary. That can work against that. And that's why having that compassionate leadership as a platform, as a grounding force is so important, because then it allows empowerment. It allows that power to be reclaimed and dispersed. And so, yes.
Well, that goes with what Georgia's talking about, like the leader laying down ego, like it's not
Yes.
about position or title.
No.
The only position that matters to a leader is their position next to the person that they're leading, right? Like
Right.
where the position of their heart, right? Like that type of thing. And yeah, as you're listening, those that are live, if you want to throw something, Ryan's putting a lot of great things in the chat here. We'd love to have anyone else share if anything pops up in your mind in terms of ideas or great things that you hear. Go ahead and put that in the chat so that we can kind of keep record of all of that. But I love Shannon, and I love the idea of empowerment, because this goes beyond like the idea of how do we as culture of good empower companies to engage their people. It's actually, how do we get companies to learn and leaders to learn how to empower their people to engage themselves.
You got it.
Now, this is where everything shifts in this conversation, because normally we're looking at like, I need to engage, I need to engage, I need to engage. And certainly as compassionate leaders, we're going to. What's interesting is the leaders that are the most engaged leaders that I've found when I go into companies are those that never talk about engagement. They just love their people really, really well. And they just live for their people. They just champion them. That's why we called this workshop Championing Your Employee Engagement. It's really championing people. And in doing so, you're empowering them to engage themselves. George, Shannon, what are ways that you guys have seen people engage themselves at work? Because that's interesting to think about in terms of this conversation, like really, really empowering people to do so.
Well, when you think of, if you're an employee or you're a leader and you want something to change, you want a behavior to change, or you want an output in your environment to change, it starts with you, right? It starts with you saying, okay, if I want my teams to be more open and honest, I myself need to act in an open and honest way. And I'll show them what that looks and feels like. But then I also need to create environments where my employees can open up and be honest. And you do that by setting those boundaries of trust, by granting trust. I know a lot of people say you need to earn trust, and once trust is broken, it's really hard to earn back. But when you grant trust, there is something so beautiful about unconditionally granting trust. It's almost like assuming you're innocent until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Granting trust, a lot of people have never been granted trust to act, to be. And that can be such a transformative act of love for your employees and your clients. Like, I trust you. I trust that you have what it takes to get this done, even if you've never done this before.
Yeah.
And I trust that I have created an environment where even if you fail, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. What about in situations where the leader is concerned? This is interesting, because if you're a leader in an organization and you're not trusting your people, usually it's because you've not been trusted yourself. So the fear, back to George's statement, the fear of a lot of this employee engagement and focusing on soft skills, and so focusing on like, love and caring and giving people opportunity to fail, is that if I'm a leader and my team fails, that means I do. And if I don't have trust with my leadership, right, the executive team or whoever else, then I'm scared that I'm going to catch the fallout of my team failing. See what I'm saying? So that's why we're talking about a culture of engagement. Because if you're in a workplace where you can't trust because you've not been trusted, either you have to break that cycle and begin doing it, even if it hasn't been given for you, or you have to change where you work and find another place. That's the answer. And certainly that conversation is easier to be had now because people are looking for quality talent and options are readily available for you to step into another workplace where you can find compassionate leadership, right? That's what keeps going on in my head is like, how do we build this? But also, what if this is not a part of our organization that we work for? What do we do in that scenario? Is there anything else that you can see around that idea? What do we do? Those that are a part of the workshop, George, do you have ideas around that?
Yeah, as Shannon was talking, like all I heard was ability, right? The different types of ability that we have, both as a leader and then those as employee. And as she was talking about the trust factor, and even as you're talking, Ryan, and adding to it, we're talking about being vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Vulnerability as a leader. Because if we're not vulnerable because of the fear of failure or because we don't want our team to know that we're not as good as we may talk, then we're talking about from vulnerability to accountability. And that's where we humanize this situation. The culture of empowerment is that we have to be human to say, listen, there's nothing perfect about George. I am going to fail you, whether that's through communication, whether that's through timeliness, and being there when you need me the most. I'll try my best, but listen, I am human. I may not feel like it today. And that's okay for me. And it's okay for you to not feel like it or be in the mood that it needs. And so when we talk about that trust and really establishing that trust and have that empowerment, I'm hearing, man, I got to be vulnerable. And not only do I have to be vulnerable as a leader, I have to allow those with me and beside me or under me to hold me accountable. Because then there's a sense of urgency and a sense of togetherness that says, when George is at his weakest moment, I know that my team has me. And the reason why they have my back is because I am vulnerable. When I'm down, I'm vulnerable when we're celebrating.
Yeah.
And they're walking with that journey. We lost that sense of, we just want to celebrate and our team see us when we're celebrating. But they don't want to see it. We don't let our team see us when the doors close and there's pain or tears coming down our eyes or stress of what's happening above me, right? I can have a great culture within my mindset, but maybe I fear my leader. And so in doing so, I close my door so those under me, like you said, Ryan, are not exposed to those vulnerabilities, when in fact, those small moments is what will connect us. They see that, hey, George is not perfect. And so I think part of that empowerment is being vulnerable and also having that accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I want to say too, none of what we're talking about is easy, and it's not a light switch situation.
Yeah.
This all takes time, and it takes the unsexy part of this is that it takes time and it takes consistency and it takes holding space for uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
It takes these things, but I mean, we don't have to be afraid of those things. We can be courageous and step up and start doing this at any time because we have the power to do so, because we can be the change that we want to see.
Yeah, I think about a real practical way of doing this. Little sales pitch here, not really, because we give these out free. It's my book, Build a Culture of Good. At the end of each chapter, leaders, there's great questions to engage team members with, for them to ask themselves, but also like for you to sit down with your team and sit down and there's really around like questions around their purpose and what they're passionate about. Great curious questions at the end of each chapter in the book. And just reach out and I'll send you one. But those are great kind of like beginning questions to kind of spark conversation and get to know your people more. That piece is really important. Are there other ways before we move on to community fulfillment? Are there any other ways that you can think of in terms of how to get the message across to each team member? So if I'm seeing this, I'm thinking, okay, I want to empower my people, but how do I get them to know that they have the power to engage themselves? Like, what can I practically curate or to start? Or is it just a conversation? Like, what is that? I know there's vulnerability. We're still talking a lot of concepts, but if we were to break this down, we're like, okay, I can take a step toward empowering people. What would that step be? And what can we do right now to think about this?
Well, in any change, when you move people through change, it always starts with awareness and not any sort of, like, to me, flowery or ambiguous awareness. It means direct awareness. Like, for instance, I'm a leader or I'm a manager and I'm going to host a meeting and I'm going to put a stake in the ground and say, from this time forward,
Mm-hmm.
these are the behaviors I want to see. And this is why.
Yeah.
This is why, because I love you guys and I
Yeah.
love my team because I care about you and I care about myself and I care about the work we're doing and I care about our clients and I care about our communities. So from this moment forward, here's 2 behaviors that I want us to be acting in. And if I don't act in that way, I want you to call me out. If you're not acting in that way, I'm going to call you out.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you build excitement and desire to want to be a part of that. And then you consistently help build and transform those skills, which is around emotional intelligence and other things. Finally, into you want this to sustain. So you need to be reinforcing the behaviors that you want to see. So when you're thinking about any sort of change, the things you can do today, bring direct awareness to what you want to change.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good stuff. And for those of you that are on here that you're like, well, I want to bring this into my company. What's my next step? We do this with companies. I wasn't joking when I said we could come in and have a mixed martial arts workshop with culture of empowerment concepts and teach your team. We have 3-month engagements that actually bring about what we're moving into, and that's this idea of community fulfillment. When the reason that I added this in, obviously, culture of good at the very core of what we do is about how business can be a force for good, and community fulfillment for me, in terms of how I saw teams engage at TCC, the at the time the largest Verizon retailer in the country, where I launched Culture of Good. Culture of Good, because it had the system and process and tools in place to be able to be measured and know, okay, this is an actual movement. It's not just a concept. That community fulfillment, when the company committed to it and made promises around it, that engaged employees because it's what you said earlier. It gave them autonomy. It gave them the ability to say, what am I passionate about? What do I care about? When we talk about an engaging culture with the culture of good, we're going to bring about these ideas of how involved is the employees with each other in finding a sense of fulfillment in their everyday work. How connected is your employees' everyday work to a greater good? This speaks to that intrinsic motivator within each one of us, this desire that I believe that we wake up with every day that says, I want to know that my life and my work matters. What are we saying? I want meaning. I want purpose. I want connection. The things that we're wired for, the things that we have need of, right? Relationship. That is a big term that is kind of scary for some people. Kind of like what George said earlier. If there's trust issues when we talk about relationship at work, that's going to bring in the experiences that you've had outside of work, right? Our own traumas, our own things that we've come past ourselves. That's where compassion comes from for others. We've been through some things. George, you talked about it with the vulnerability. A culture of empowerment is really powerful because what we found in creating opportunity on a quarterly basis for employees to go and give back and do good together, we called it Big Good. That created an opportunity for people to have that sense of community fulfillment. If you missed last month's February's workshop, it was all about retention, but we talked about it in terms of really creating opportunities for people to be fulfilled in their everyday work and to be connected. And that having a friend at work was vital to the connection and the commitment that that employee would have to the workplace and to the world. And so the commitment that we have as leaders is, how do I foster shared experiences where employees are collectively giving back and doing good, but not doing so as like a program or something that happens every once in a while, but something that's embedded into the everyday work of the employee, even if it's a mindset shift. You talk about that a lot, Shannon. Like, our process that we work with companies has to start with, let's change the mindset, right? Because if we can change the mindset, then we can change behavior. And those behaviors can lead to fulfillment. You know, I always talk about how employee engagement, employee fulfillment's the new employee engagement. And that's really the idea, is within your organization having quarterly good that takes place, where it's structured, that's predictable, that the employees are connecting around more than just their everyday work. Does that make sense? Anything to add?
Well, just that when, when individuals have compassionate leadership that empower individuals to come into their greatest purpose, to do their greatest good, to be that way, they then are fulfilled. And
Yeah.
when you're fulfilled,
Yeah.
you're actively engaging yourself because you want more of it.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've
Yeah. Right.
ever talked with a company where you're just like, there is something about them. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I want to be a part of it. I think that was how I was when I first talked to you, Ryan,
Yeah.
14 years ago.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know, there's something about this company and I
Yeah.
just want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the same deal, is you don't always have to put your finger on it, but it really starts with how you're thinking, how you're feeling, which ultimately affects those behaviors. But you got to start from that thought process. And that helps everyone come into their greatest purpose, which then means that our world is experiencing all these people at their greatest purpose, doing their greatest purpose, which means that our world is being fulfilled. And I can't think of a better outcome than that.
Yeah. Yeah. We need more of that.
Yeah.
You know, when I talk to people, they see the culture of good when I go through the airport, or, you know, I'm at CVS or whatever, and employees are all, you know, behind the desk are always like, what's that? And I'm like, well, that's a company that has the process and tools and oversight to build a really engaging, fulfilling culture in your business that gives back, that empowers people to care, bring their soul to work, you know. And the employees, like behind the desk, are always like, oh my God, can you please bring that into my can I introduce you to my boss? You know, because this is what employees, I mean, this is what everybody wants, right? But I think it goes back to this entire conversation that leaders that are not engaged certainly cannot engage anyone else, right? If we're not engaging ourselves, if we as leaders are not empowered to engage our team is not going to be engaged with us. It really is more, we take the first step as leaders toward this idea of building relationship with each individual within our team, authentic relationship where it's more than just, you know, I talked about it with you guys on Monday, you know, this statement of this is what I want from you needs to change to this is what I want for you. And knowing what you want for each one of your team members in terms of their work, in terms of their world, and in terms of their well-being, like finding those three answers. What do I want from each team member in their work, in their world, and their well-being? Because when we talk about fulfillment, Shannon, George, you talk about this a lot too, like, you know, or engagement in general, most of the conversation is, here's why we need to really be intentional about employee engagement, because the more engaged an employee is, the more productive they're going to be, which means they're going to make you more money. So here's the ROI. And I can certainly give you all of that. But the reality is, most people say that 85% of the leaders that work in organizations are not trustworthy, that they're not engaged with their leaders. Like it's a reality that we know that this is what we need to do, but how do we do it, right? And so wanted to go over a few kind of take action steps that we can start to take as those that are here on LinkedIn with us, or you're watching at a later date. We'll record this and send it out to everyone. George, you want to kind of think about also kind of that last thought on employee fulfillment and having that corporate kind of community fulfillment piece along with that. Was there anything else to add to that? Sorry, I didn't give you any time to kind of expound.
No, I love what you said towards the end there. Changing our mindset from what I want from you to what I want with you. That's
for you, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, because when we go from the from mindset to the for you mindset, I think that really elevates that sense of purpose, right? Purpose is everything that really drives that fulfillment. And once you gain that sense of purpose, it makes everything go well, and really allows that person to continue. I think once you're engaged, then it becomes, how do I stay engaged?
Yeah. It's kind of, does that take structure, or what is that? What advice do you have for the leaders on how to stay engaged?
I think it goes back to the beginning, being that compassionate leader, right?
Yeah.
When you're connected to the person, that ultimately gives you permission and vulnerability and accountability to be connected to the purpose of that person. And I think it's staying connected, is having that consistent conversation. I think where it drops off is that we stop communicating in the ways that we first communicated. I think there has to be that consistent form of communication, whatever that touch is, or that act that is needed in the beginning. It has to be the thing that continues to guide that person and guide the relationship as you increasingly try to grow that fulfillment with the person.
What's crazy is we have not even brought up the idea of remote teams, I don't think. And what's powerful about that is it doesn't matter. Like Qatar and I were in a long distance relationship for several months, not real long, but like it was challenging, sure. But the reality is we chose to build relationship. And because of that, we overcame those challenges, and we just looked for ways to connect and to get creative. And, there's no way to really spell that out, because each person in each instance is going to look completely different. Connecting with George is going to look different than connecting with Shannon. And that's why we're saying the greatest thing you can do with your employee engagement is actually get to know each one of your employees. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And I know that for those that are on here, taking this back to your organization and saying, okay, I've got it. We just need to get to know each person. May not sound like something that everybody gets excited about, but I think you can structure in a way and create opportunity for people to connect and create shared experiences. And then you as a leader can fold or craft those conversations into those experiences. So a few challenges and take action steps that we can take. Shannon, do you want to take the lead on this a little bit, and George can add in?
Yeah. So to kind of send us off, because I know we're at the end of time, is, write down, you can put in the chat if you want, but, what's one thing or one way you can let go, whether that's letting go of control or a project or something that you're just white knuckling it, that you can let go of and allow someone else to own. Oh, I don't know about you, but it feels amazing to own something from start to finish, and to own the successes and even the failures of that, and to own the lessons, because when you allow people to do that, they then learn lessons, and those are their lessons to own for the rest of their lives. So what's one way to let go, just one, You don't have to come up with 10. Just start with one. That pebble mentality, right, George?
Delegation is
Yeah.
good, George.
What method will you use to encourage each team member to engage? So we've talked about a few different thoughts. We've talked about a few different ways to engage or provide an engaging environment. But what's one way that you're going to start on that process of active engagement? Allowing, I don't like to say allow because it's not empowering language, but
Giving permission.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
permission based is also not
Yeah,
empowering.
that's true. That's true.
You know, I need to coach you guys a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But the idea that providing awareness that your employees now have the power to engage themselves and to call you out for providing an environment that isn't engaging to them, right? Switching that dialogue and providing that awareness, that accountability. And then, what quarterly good can your team or organization commit to? Meaning, not just how much money can we raise and donate or what automatic thing can we sign up, but what is one actively engaging way that your company or organization can give back on a quarterly basis?
Yeah, that's so powerful. For those that are on here and you're like, well, I'd like to really build that type of structure within our business, that is what we do. So we have 3-month engagements, not just a workshop that we can bring in, but specific to building what we call our big good, our good, and my good. You'll see more about it on LinkedIn, but we're starting a campaign called the Do Good campaign, and we're looking for 1,000 companies that will sign on to commit to doing some form of good with their organization on a quarterly basis. That's all we're looking for. We're building the culture of good movement. If you're interested in bringing any of these concepts into your business, or if you'd like to reach out and get one of these books, just use the QR code that's on your screen there. That's a 30-minute scheduled call with me. I am not a salesperson. Shannon and George will tell you that. I just love exploring ways that we can partner together and find ways that culture of good can have a greater impact and influence in the workplace and world. And so as you're thinking about this workshop, as you're thinking about prior workshops or future work that you're doing with culture and people, connect with George and Shannon on LinkedIn and myself. Reach out to us on cultureofgood.com, or just scan that QR code on there and schedule a time to get in touch with us, and we'll rock it out. We love the idea that your business can engage not only the minds of people but their hearts, and but it does take a mindset shift, and we're excited to have opportunities at any point to be able to bring this workshop in. So many companies are looking for, how do we engage? How do we keep people? How do we recruit? All of those aspects are really addressed within a 3-month engagement with the culture of good, because you're building fulfilling experiences that streamline your engagement efforts with your employees, customers, and your community all in one effort. So it takes less time, less resources, and it's far more effective in order to make an impact and engage people right where they're at. So thank you, Julie, for jumping on. Others, Michelle, calling those that are here with us out a little bit. Do you have anything else to share, George or Shannon?
Well, just that I'm sending so much love out your way. The world needs more of it. So I'll just throw that in.
And we'll just receive it all. Seriously. Yeah, George?
No, I agree. Just really love. Go hug somebody after this. After you leave this this session, share it. Please share this so other people within your network can have it as well. But I challenge everybody to leave wherever you're watching this at right now. As soon as you hit the end button and this goes off, and go hug somebody and let them know that you love them. Because those words, you never know what that small thing will do to somebody. You don't know their home life and what kind of situation they may be coming from. You don't know the conversation. I get people all the time who say, why? Well, let me tell you why I love you.
Yeah.
And that is what brings things together. When we talk about champion engagement and within your team, just a small act of kindness brought to you via the word love can open up doors.
Hug someone, tell them you love them, but tell them why you love them.
And then contact us and we'll help you
Yes.
bring it in.
Please. Yeah. We're ready. Our team is ready to come into your organization, and all upfront costs, and the workshops are very effective, proven results that can stand the test of time, and also remote work and changes that are taking place throughout your organization. So thank you all for jumping on today. We'll be back next month as we look at the ideas around your values and how to really drive results through knowing what your values are today, because as organizations evolve, so do our values. So we're going to do some values work next month. Make sure that you jump on with us at Culture of Good, and reach out at cultureofgood.com if you're interested in bringing this workshop or other workshops into your business. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you back next month. Love you.
Bye, everybody. Love you.